Morning, Kurt. We are recording, just so you know. Hello, everyone. We are getting underway in just a minute. We're
Hello
trying
again.
to get everyone connected. So we appreciate your patience and be aware we are recording.
Good morning, Jabari.
Morning.
Hi, Jabari.
Hey, Priscilla. How are you?
Good. How's the kids? Everybody?
Everybody's well.
Good. Excellent.
Just trying to stay afloat.
Yes. Bob Gallery, hello.
Morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good
Pamela.
morning, everyone.
Hey, Jamal.
Hi, Bob. Good to see everyone.
You too.
Good morning.
I could just remind the trustees, this morning you'll be visible, but we're going to mute everyone. You have to unmute yourself, which if you don't know how to do that, you just have to kind of tap over your face and you'll see a microphone icon. You just have to unmute yourself. There will be a moment where we'll do public comment. I just have to ask before we get started on how people can participate with that. So don't forget, if you want to chime in, you just have to unmute yourself as we go.
Okay.
All right, Priscilla, you win the most impressive bookshelf award for background. You feel like you're watching all these cable TV shows and everybody's doing it from home and who's got what on their bookshelf, but you definitely have. That is really cool.
And people keep asking me, did you read those books? I mean, what would they be doing here?
It's not a green screen, right?
No.
I find osmosis sometimes work best for books on bookshelves. So.
What?
Osmosis has a way of absorbing the information in the books.
Yeah.
Just waiting for a couple more people here.
We just did a brief governance meeting and we had Cheryl and John, and so I know they're on their way.
Before we officially get started, if I could let some of the attendees know, if you would like to participate in the public comment, please go to the icon at the bottom listed as Q&A. You can just identify that you would like to be participate in the public comment, and we will call on you. You just have to unmute your microphone, or if you feel uncomfortable doing so, you can certainly write out your question. Only the panelists can see the questions. It's not something that the public will be able to see. I just need you to identify yourself and your affiliation with the public comments so that it can be written into the record. If you prefer to have it written out, it will be read into the record. So you can participate either way. And if you have questions, type them in the Q&A if it's regarding the Zoom.
Okay.
All right, Pamela, who are we still missing? I can send them an email. Or you can send them an email if you'd like.
Yes, I'll do that.
From the manage participants, you can actually add or invite people straight from the panelist tab. And that's probably going to be the fastest way to do it. We now have 40 people in our attendees, so I'm trying to comb through just in case someone ended up there instead of a panelist by mistake. You can always raise your hand or ask a question if you're in the call and I can't see you and I'm not finding your name.
Jay, Ben
Oh, there's
Bradley
Ben.
is in
I just
the
saw
attendee list.
Oh,
Oh, you just
where'd he
already
go?
got him. He's
And Ben, make sure that you tap on the microphone to unmute yourself.
Yeah, for some reason, Jay, I'm only getting like 5 boxes visible, even though
Me too.
I know there are more people. Like I can't see
So-
David right now, for example.
This
There's
is
no.
because we're currently in a screen share. All the participants are seeing a string across the top of people in the call. Everybody else, though, that is just listening in on this call is seeing what is being shared right now, which is the title slide of the PowerPoint.
Got it.
So as soon as I take that down and we commence the meeting, everyone will see the grid.
Okay, got it.
But you can scroll through too. See everybody.
Yeah, I don't think I know how to do that. Sorry.
Hi, Michael.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning.
Morning.
please promote Linda Dorsina Fori to panelist.
Oh, there she is. Got it. Thanks.
As well as Evelyn Arana Ortiz.
Yep.
Oh, I see.
Now I could see everyone. Good.
All right.
Good.
Morning.
Now,
Looks like Cheryl's on too, but
Being delayed.
It's Cheryl.
Hi. Hi again. We're waiting on Jeff Hawkins.
and John, right?
And John.
all right, testing. You can hear me now, right?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
All righty. Good morning.
Good morning.
Just a reminder, trustees, for those that weren't on initially, we ask that you keep your microphone muted and then unmute yourself as you'd like to speak freely, as you would in the meeting. You just have to unmute yourself and mute yourself in between.
And Pamela, I need to call roll, or you do?
You can call the roll call. I just need it on record, each person. I can say their name or you can say their name.
Yeah, can you do that? Do you mind just doing that? And we'll see who's, because I can see some of the participants, but again, my screen is limited, so.
Just make sure who we have here right now.
Because we could get rolling if, in the interest of time, if we have, I think we have a quorum.
I just have to, I'm just gonna text just to make sure he's not listed under one of the phone numbers or something that we're not recognizing.
Who's that?
Jeff?
Okay.
Ben Bradley's on.
Yeah. Can you hear me? Hi, it's Ben.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're
Okay,
good.
good.
We could
Sorry
hear
for
you.
the technical issues on my end.
Hey guys, Bob, do you have me? It's John Hyler.
There you go.
Hi, hi.
Yep.
I had the wrong code, plug it in from the last meeting. Sorry.
That's all right.
All right, Pamela, you want to just call roll, please?
Yes. Just wanted to open the meeting. This is officially the Board of Trustees meeting for May 26, 2020 for the record. Just taking roll call, if I may. Chair Bob Gallery,
Here.
Vice Chair Evelyn Arana Ortiz,
Here, present.
Lamau Arenas,
Present.
Jabari Yassim,
Present.
Linda Docina Fori,
Here.
and Bradley.
Here.
Cheryl Cronin,
Present.
Jeff Hawkins, John Heiler,
Here.
China Tyler. And Jeff just told me he's in the process. He'll be with us momentarily in a couple of minutes. He's just sent a message.
I think Priscilla.
And Priscilla Douglas. My apologies, Priscilla.
Yes.
How could I?
Okay, so we have a quorum, and hopefully Jeff will be on in a second, and maybe China. I haven't heard from her. So why don't we get rolling, everybody? Good morning. Welcome remarks. Hey, this is interesting, isn't it? World of Zoom. I hope most importantly, I hope all of you and your families have been well since the last time we met. It's unbelievable that was January, and how life changed very shortly thereafter. The fund had a presentation, a gathering of people in February of, I forget how many, 30 or so potential funders. And then the next week, the world just, changed. And it was one of the last, I think, reasonably sized public meetings that many of those people went to. So it's been an interesting 10-week period. But anyway, I hope you're all well. And Pamela, thanks for pulling this together. And I know David will talk about staff and preparedness at great length, but as well, I want to thank upfront everyone on the team for being, Michael, just down the list, Laura, everyone's efforts have been remarkable, as David and others will talk about. But on behalf of all of us, thank you for your efforts during this remarkable period of time. Actually, even including you, David, so not to leave you out. The only other, I have two very quick things before we turn it over to David, that is to review. Hopefully everybody has reviewed, but if so, approve the minutes for the last trustee meeting on January 20th. If I could get a motion to approve.
So
Move.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. And then Pamela, I don't know whether I'm doing this one or Evelyn is, in terms of the next agenda item, designation of finance and audit as the investment committee.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, as a matter of housekeeping, because the bylaws call for a specific investment committee, we just want to have you, as the arbiter of committee charters, simply go on record and designating that the Finance and Audit Committee serves as the investment committee as well.
Got it. Thank you for that clarification. And I so move or declare, or whatever my authority is to do so.
Thank you.
And now, without further ado, we're going to hand it over to the president. David, thank you so much, and take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, trustees. We have several slides that I would like to run through. This is a mixture of items that really predate our COVID-19 reality, but then I will focus in on what the last 10 weeks has been like and what we believe the future may hold. So I don't want to do a disservice to items stemming from the first 6, 7, 8 months of the year. But I think the bulk of our interest will probably be on how we're doing right now and what comes next. So I will run through items A through C and then pause for comment and discussion, and then continue with the following items. If I could have the first item A, please. This is a update to the trustees that the library signed on to the World Intellectual Property Day letter, which basically is an effort as part of our membership with the International Federation of Library Associations, basically calling on the WIPO to recognize the importance of preserving cultural heritage worldwide in light of climate change. So although we did this administratively, it's my duty here to keep the trustees informed of us having done so. You have a copy of the full letter in your packets to review if you wish. Next slide, please. Item B relates to the accomplishments of the year. These were submitted to City Council about 6 weeks ago, and to a large extent, I'll just highlight some particular highlights. In 2019, the borrowing trajectory at the overall level was 2.2 million digital and 2.8 million physical copies. In 2020, which was the estimate at the time, this would be the first year that the borrowing of electronic items, ebooks, audiobooks, movies, and so forth, would surpass the total of physical items borrowed. With the COVID-19 period and our response to the epidemic, those numbers continue to go in that direction. However, we were also on track to see visitor demand exceed the previous year by 200,000 visitors, up to 3.7 million. Our focus really had been on continuing to expand services in the neighborhoods, and also our library culture, which we had put a particular focus on with the all-staff meeting back in November, which now seems so many months ago. We included our initial response to the COVID-19 pandemic, and I'll go into that in more detail on the next few slides. Next slide, please. So once we closed to the public for in-person service on March 16th, the library and all of its staff really pivoted to the online environment. Our online content became really the only way of serving material to the public. We took many of our programs online, from children's story time to author talks to book discussion groups to conversation circles. In conjunction with the Boston Public Library Fund, we were able to launch this program called Books for Boston, which would buy new books from local bookstores which were otherwise closed for business, and distribute them as essentially book care packages through nonprofit organizations throughout the city of Boston, starting with Boston Healthcare for the Homeless, and the Boston Hope Field Hospital that was converted out of part of the convention center. And I'll have some stats on that on the next slide. Our next focus was continuing to keep our facilities safe and clean during this period where we were closed. All of our staff focused on remote work. Those who could do their jobs remotely did so. Those who could not engaged in some professional development activity coordinated by our training coordinator and senior management. So those really gives you a sense of how our focus changed over the 10-week period. Next slide, please. So to put some numbers around that activity, and numbers tell a story, they never tell the whole story, but they're an important indicator of the level of activity, the level of demand, and what we were able to do. So quickly we saw this emerging trend on an almost weekly basis, new library card signups, which recently surpassed 22,000. So this is 22,000 new patrons of the Boston Public Library, all signing up for cards during this period since March 15th. We talked earlier about the online programs. In total, because you can watch the program later, you don't always have to watch it live. We have seen over 140,000 online program views so far. And we're averaging about 72,000 items being checked out on a weekly basis. And then with respect for Book for Boston, we've now delivered over 2,300 items to those organizations, and at a cost of $31,000, all coming out of funds raised specifically for this program by the Boston Public Library Fund.
Hey, David, what's a typical, what has ever been this type of, how crazy are these numbers for you?
I'm going to ask Laura and Michael to come help me with those. Laura can talk about the circulation numbers and Michael can talk about the program numbers and Books for Boston. Laura, do you want to jump in here first?
Yeah, the e-card signups are up over 210% from that time the previous year. The digital checkouts, if we sustain that 3-week average, we'd have over 3.6 million checkouts for the year, which is up over 1 million from last year. Children's material in particular is very heavily used. That's up about 177% from just a few months ago. So we're seeing really dramatic changes to the use of our online content.
Michael, did you want to add on the programming and Books for Boston?
Sure. Good morning, trustees. Thank you. Just briefly, doing online programs is such a different thing than doing in-person programs because you're not limited by the number of people in a space. So one amusing story is our conversation circles were getting a little bit unwieldy because we were getting people from all over the world. So we actually had to make a rule that you had to at least live in the United States to participate in our conversation circles. Laura Koenig, our children's librarian, used to doing story times for 30 kids or so in the library, and now she's dealing with a couple of hundred while she's in her living room. So, and then the additional piece is that because there's the capacity to leave the recordings online, we get substantial views after the fact, after the program is over. So lots more people are seeing our programs than before. Our author talks are getting 400 or 500 people. It's pretty impressive. The book for, go ahead.
Oh, no, sorry. Go, Mike. I apologize.
I was just going to say the Books for Boston has been very successful. In addition to the statistics that David reported, we have 3 more organizations in the queue, including the Department of Youth Services to provide books for incarcerated teens. And then we just recently have been working with the BCYF meal distribution centers and the YMCA meal distribution centers that are going to see the numbers go way up because we finally got them to partner with us to deliver books while they're delivering meals as well.
Oh, that's fantastic. And sorry to do this. I know there's so much you just in the trenches with, and I know you're going to be asking for additional funds. Is there a way and I'm optimistic that we do get out of this, and when, I don't know, but is there a way that we can retain all this so we can keep this engagement going a year or 2 years from now? This seems like a great service, and I know everybody's working really hard, but are you also thinking about just how we might be able to retain and continue with this kind of exposure for the library of helping going forward when the thing all settles down?
Yeah, absolutely. This has been a great opportunity for us to really transition to doing online outreach, online programming. Some of the programs we're doing, publishers have relaxed restrictions around copyright, so that's been very much a moment in time. But many of the programs that we do, we will certainly for the next several months be only providing online programming, and then beyond that, we'll certainly look at each program and see if it would be a good candidate to continue to present online.
Great, thank you.
I'll just jump in really quick and say, I think this is fantastic, especially the Books for Boston, where you're purchasing from local bookstores, right? That without you purchasing, I mean, they would not have any revenue coming in. So I think it's wonderful how we're able to hit, 2 things at once. So it's fantastic. And even teaming up with the DYS and all those organizations, this is a wonderful thing that we're doing. Good job.
Amazing. Agreed.
2 things that aren't included here are just to highlight that several staff, I think upwards of 30 people, have been volunteering with other city agencies to help out where they needed. The Department of Unemployment the Unemployment Assistance Program was one of the areas where there was, for obvious reasons, much more need. And so it's been great to see people being willing to go beyond what their normal day job would be to help out where the city needed. Also, within this context, we can't really capture the individual outreach efforts yet, or the individual points of contact that are ongoing as well. Certainly we know those that are calling the library and asking for support. So we're working on a way to capture some of those statistics as well. Because the danger is when you summarize up with high level numbers, you don't capture every possible interaction that's going on across all of our staff. And then just the final bullet on this to support Laura's numbers around the e-content use. We've received authorization from the city to take money from our FY20 surplus, this year's surplus, that would otherwise go away, to divert that to additional e-contact, which will decrease wait times and increase some availability.
David, I don't want to interrupt, but just looking at participants since we called roll, Pamela, it looks like China and Jeff have joined us as well.
Thank you. Next slide, please. And so I'm going to give you a high-level update on where we sit today with respect to possible reopening. On this first slide, I want to just review as of last week where the state's guidance has gone and where the city and the mayor's guidance is as things stand today. As part of the phase 1 reopening plans, the governor allowed libraries as early as May 25th, if they could do so safely, to begin offering a curbside pickup service. With the indication that broader library services such as browsing or using spaces would at least have to wait until phase 2. With the note, of course, that there would be at least 3 weeks between each individual phase. There was further noting that because of some of the particular challenges in Boston, including simply the density of people in this urban environment, that for some categories of service, Boston would see a later startup. So just because the governor has said X can start on date Y doesn't mean that Boston would always automatically follow. It can in some sectors, but perhaps not in others. With respect to the city of Boston, as the particular principles apply to a potential library reopening, the public health emergency remains in effect. The density of the population in our urban environment requires a cautious and thorough approach, and any decisions the library takes will be under the guidance of the city and with the authorization of the city and the Public Health Commission. All our plans should pay attention to issues of equity and ensuring that vulnerable populations stay forefront in our planning efforts. With respect to construction, because we have about 5 capital projects that were in the construction stage, which were obviously paused in early March, the restart of those is underway. Some began last week, others begin this week. We're also expecting to have guidance that some office space, as long as the underlying numbers hold, will be permittable as of June 1st. And we would get more detail for that and other sectors at times this week. So if we go to the next slide, what does this mean for the library? So while our initial plans are in their final draft stage, we are required to have those reviewed by public health, by the city's operational and safety protocols review team, to look at this from an administrative, human resources and labor point of view, and to stay coordinated with citywide services. So the bottom line is that review process needs to go on before we can make any more explicit announcements to the public. So we do not at this point have a date when we would begin the first of the in-person services for the public. And for us, we can go to the next slide, and then I'll open it up for comment after this particular slide that I will walk us through. So right now, we expect to continue supporting those who are working remotely. Those who are able to do their job fully remotely should continue to do so. We need to finalize the review of our initial plans with the City of Boston. We then need to coordinate with our unions and give notification to staff. In particular, we expect to start with return of a full complement, or as close as we can to a full complement of our facility staff to get ready for the first phase of reopening. We would begin with holds pickup at Central, which means that if you have placed a book on hold, you can come get it once you're told that it's ready. You would queue up in a way that's similar to the way people do at grocery stores and other locations that are doing a version of curbside pickup. We would follow this in groups of branches. Each branch is actually very different. If you've been to many of them, you will know this. And so the configuration doesn't lend itself to doing exactly the same thing in the same way at each location. In fact, at each place, there would need to be some reconfiguration of workspaces and service areas. We would also bring back the staff required to support this service initially. With respect to materials, I didn't put this on this slide, but I will note that any returned books, the plan is to quarantine them at re-entry to the system. So if you return them at a branch, they get quarantined there. The collections team has worked with the IMLS, which is basing its guidance on the CDC's guidance. Because a book is made of paper, cloth, often has a plastic or other type of cover. Surfaces, are low risk, but not zero risk. And so a 72-hour quarantine period for any returned materials or materials entering the system from other libraries appears to be the safest guidance. So as books get returned, we withhold them, mark them for 3 days, and then after the 3-day period, start processing them within the system. And then continue planning additional services we would want to offer after this is all functional, perhaps the ability to print, to use a computer by appointment, those kind of services. But right now we've done our detailed planning around the holds pickup model. And as soon as we have this reviewed, if we have to make any changes, we'll make changes, and then be able to announce a date for when we could bring this service online, if you will, or in person at all our locations. So I'm going to pause there before continuing with my presentation and take comments or questions from the trustees.
Hey, David, it's Evelyn. So have you, as you put your plans together, is there a financial model that goes with it? Because it's going to increase, I don't know, it may increase staff. It just, it's a lot of work. Right. Sanitizing around the building, quarantining the books, keeping track. So is there an estimate of any financial impact regarding to that?
We certainly have to purchase PPE that we didn't need to purchase before in these quantities. And that is one additional cost. We are planning to utilize sneeze guard screens in particular areas where that's appropriate. From a staffing point of view, because this is the only service we will bring back initially, we anticipate being able to manage it in a way that leverages existing staff and our security force to, as well as some management team to do that. So we're trying to be as fiscally responsible and financially responsible. Obviously, if something costs money, if it's a choice between doing it and not doing it, we're going to do it. But at this point, we haven't done the level of detailed financial analysis that you're asking for. I do believe as we get to later services and start to partition space perhaps or other things, then that is where we would see the bulk of additional costs.
So what I heard, I sat on the Ways and Means committee, and I'll do a comment on my turn. Yeah. But it would be good for you guys to keep track of that, because it's my understanding that the mayor is going to be looking for federal funds for any additional costs related to this, is my understanding. Is that your understanding?
Ellen will jump in here. Sure, go ahead.
We do track the costs associated with this. The increase in cleaning supplies is certainly a main one of them. Other things like we got people's Zoom licenses, business licenses. We are collecting that. We do submit it to a management budget every week. And I understand that we are expecting to get at least some level of federal reimbursement for that.
All right, thank you.
Good question, Evelyn, thanks.
Good morning, everyone. David, first of all, thank you for all this tremendous work that you and the rest of the team are doing. It's really commendable, and I'm so proud of the library.
I agree.
A virtual hug, here we go.
Very much a team effort, including strong collaboration and input from both our unions and some staff as well. We've done 2 web conferences so far with the whole staff and taken pretty much any question anyone had. So the product that you're seeing today is really the result of a lot of work.
Perfect. I do have a question, and it's in regard to contact tracing and how that's factoring into your planning, as well as I know you're phasing up the opening and the interaction among in-person services. So I'm just wondering, is contact tracing part of the plan? And if so, is that still being defined, or do you have some sense of how that might play out?
So we expect to see details around that in the guidance we will get from the Public Health Commission. We do know that the existing protocols are that if someone should test positive, that information is passed to the Public Health Commission. They do an interview with the person. They decide what level of contact tracing is appropriate for that particular individual and circumstance. So we're, we'll conform and comply with that. There is a question with respect to whether data about patrons visiting. This may be less of an issue for simply the Holes pickup piece, but that it may apply there. And so we will have to review that guidance if it's part of the ultimate plan, and understand that, well, okay, we have to balance that with protecting the confidentiality and privacy of patrons, which is paramount in the library world. So there may be some tension there that still has to be resolved, depending on what the ultimate guidance is.
Thank you.
David, do we have any figures on how many of the staff, if any, have come down with the virus?
So, for privacy reasons, I obviously can't go into any particulars on the individual health conditions. We do know a small number of individuals reported symptoms. They followed guidance, they got care. And so I think it's worth noting that many of our staff also have partners, family members, household members who work in the healthcare space, work in grocery stores, are part of how we now use the term essential workers. And so we want to be as respectful as we can of all of our staff and their family members as we go through this. And so I think we also therefore support the idea of going cautiously and slowly to ensure that any in-person service we bring back follows all of the guidance that exists to keep staff and patrons as safe as it's possible to do so.
Hey, David, again, to the whole team across the library, remarkable and in a challenging time. I guess what one of the questions, in whether we'll get an update soon or you guys are staying on top of it, the budget issues and the way expenses are now changing.
Yeah.
In some areas, you're probably using resources that were allocated, and now you're reallocating those. So from a budget perspective, and from just expense perspective, how are we doing? And then when would we get a pretty good update of that? So we understand, and how we positioned right now going forward.
So Ellen can comment on where we are year to date, and then in the next section of the trustees agenda, Evelyn and Ellen will walk us through where the city budget stands so far. Ellen, did you want to comment on year to date at this point?
Sure. As David said, we had salary funds that we were able to move down to buy additional books. Part of that, just there's been some slowing on hiring, and we had a fairly large surplus going into this. I think the interesting thing about this situation is typically when you face a budgetary downturn, you're in a position where you're trying to provide all levels of service with fewer resources. We're clearly not providing all those levels of resource. So we have pretty high overtime costs on the weekend to keep Central open on Sundays. We have high overtime costs in the branches, typically on Saturday. We haven't had any overtime since we left. That's about $9,000 alone a week that we would be spending. So not being tied to physical buildings has had a lesser impact in some ways, and the cleanliness has increased some other costs. So, and as we reopen, we'll be open, as David said, just for book pickup. That means we won't be open 9 to 9, 4 days a week at Central. We won't be open Sundays likely, and we'll be open fewer hours in the branches as well. So we review the list of staff that we're trying to replace on a weekly basis, thinking of replacing and making decisions on whether or not we should go forward with them until we know more. So we'll talk more about it when we get to the budget presentation, particularly on the external funds. But right now, we're actually not in a bad situation on the city fund right now.
So you're able to kind of balance off the two. So from just a day-to-day, and that's more what I'm concerned about, just the operating day-to-day, that it's been able to balance out because you've been able to save here, reallocate here. Okay, great. Thank you.
It's interesting, Ellen, maybe this is, I can't remember if I saw this or not, but one of the things that struck me, now I see Emily, I know Emily's going to talk about a different topic in a little bit, but we don't have any events, right? And also, I wonder about our friends at TCA too, but in terms of library, that is one impact, right, in terms of what's changed?
That is certainly something we're concerned about. And we can talk about this now if you'd like, or we can wait to.
No, if you're going to touch on it later, but it's one of the big differences aside from the things you've mentioned.
Yeah, really good point, Bob.
We're just concerned about, I think.
I mean, it's the area where we can know with certainty there is a drop in library revenue. The other areas are still strong and still or unknown. But that's one area where we know there is a loss, right?
Yeah.
This is Priscilla. In terms of the provision of services, this is something that I didn't think about initially, but I was just listening to NPR this morning, and they said that one of the things that a lot of people rely on at the library is copying. Being able to copy documents and to, and that's for unemployment or any kind of documentation that people need. And I'm just wondering how you're thinking about making that service come back, be available to people.
So good point. And there are a number of candidates for the next stage of services, which would be where we have to be most responsive to the greatest need. Printing, copying is still a real part of that. Use of a computer. But as soon as we get beyond simply a grab and go holes pickup model, we're introducing a whole nother level of service that requires a managed and structured environment with different protocols, different cleaning standards, the ability to truly implement the social distance between a staff member and the patron. So we want to get there, but this is going to be an iterative process. Right. We mapped out, I think, 12 different stages in terms of things that could come back, and felt rather than try to build the entire map for all 12 at this point, getting the first one right and then moving to the next one would be a more efficient way to do that. one idea which Michael's team, I think, has thought about, well, for those that can submit a document electronically, then we print it for them and they just pick it up. That's a different way of doing it that will work for some people, but not for the people who have, okay, I have a physical, piece of surface that I need to give to you to copy. And so there are considerations that we're still working through.
Well, I too want to commend you and the staff for such a flawless and seamless pivot, and to reach and support so many new audiences. So thank you. It's wonderful, and I understand the various steps that we need to put in place to ensure ongoing safety.
Yeah, and we've know that the mayor and others are now fond of saying shutting down was maybe difficult, but at the end of the day, it was much easier than reopening will be. And so we have to really, I think, plan this as thoroughly as it's possible to plan. Thank you.
And David, finally, from me on the union coordination with the government coordination, with the library coordination, with some of the challenges that other parts of the country are facing. I know some of the frontline workers having a real challenge, even though governments are saying reopen and these are the guidelines. How coordinated are you with the unions and on this, and will you have standards that you'll follow in the city, but maybe in addition?
Yeah, we're staying in regular contact. We're sharing information as we can. We have, I think, 2 really strong channels of communication that we've kept going. I'm anxious to get the plan through the next level approval so we can get that to people, so they have as much notice as possible about what returning even to this first phase of work will look like. We're having weekly calls with our Urban Libraries Council members across the country, Association of Research Libraries across the country. The academic environment and the public environment are not the same, but there are things that can be learned from both. We're starting to have a conversation among Boston and its immediate public library directors, which I think may be the first time that that's ever happened. So I don't know that we can get to, a single reopening period, but if Somerville, Cambridge, Watertown, Brookline, Milton can all stay in touch with us so we know who's doing what when, because we all know people live in these neighborhoods that work at the library, patrons, so we go back and forth. The virus does not respect county or city boundaries. This is a thing that the more coordination there can be, and at least information sharing that there can be, the better prepared we'll all be to do that.
Thank you.
There is one effort that is of particular significance, which is a study with IMLS and Columbus to study the actual, maybe Laura has more details on this more recently than I do, but it relates to this quarantine measure, which I think is particularly significant. Rather than simply rely on general guidance for paper and other surfaces, there's a particular effort to see if we can make that 72-hour window better based upon scientific analysis. Laura?
Yeah, the first phase, they're testing 5 library materials, including paperback books, books with plastic covers, DVD cases, to see how long the virus lasts on those specific materials. They're expecting results in mid-June, I believe. The testing started, I think, about 2 weeks ago. So like David said, that'll give us some better guidance on the quarantine window and our approach to handling collections.
Librarians are thorough when they get going on particular things, and this is no exception. I've been thoroughly impressed by the level of detail and thinking through different implications and scenarios to ensure that everything we do is based upon facts, based on science, based on public health guidance, well, maybe we should have more of that in other parts of the world too.
David, where did you leave off? Did you leave off at Focus Ahead?
I did timeline thoughts, and I was about to go into capital project status.
Okay, that's Got it.
which I guess I should do in the interest of time. Oh, China.
I have a question.
Jenna, we can't hear you.
China, your audio is not coming through.
How about now? Is it much better?
Bit better, yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Sorry about that. So good morning, everyone. Glad to see you all doing well. So I have a quick question for the team as far as, how we begin to think about how we deal with, some of the patrons who are less stable or maybe more transient, maybe some of the homeless population, and, how we're going to deal with them moving forward. Just want to just hear a little bit about how we're going to deal with them, because again, a lot of them use the library as like an anchor or a space where they, that's kind of their home space. And so, moving forward and trying to follow the CDC, guidelines as far as safety and health and wellness, like how have we begun to talk about how we're going to deal with that population of folks and just trying to keep them as safe as possible also?
So this is one of the reasons behind the Books for Boston program, that it became clear to us that we really needed to work through the organizations that work with the vulnerable populations on a day-by-day basis. So Pine Street Inn, Healthcare for the Homeless, and so forth. So I think people were grateful to get the books, but that's not the full range of service we would normally be able to offer. Our outreach navigator continue to work with members of the public who are living on the streets and looking for housing support. So we believe in the short term, the outreach efforts is the category where we can work with these populations more specifically. As we return for in-person service, ensuring that we have clear guidelines for how anybody can use our space while we're still under the threat of the pandemic, I think is going to be really, really important. And so I know Michael's outreach team is certainly thinking through this, but in the short term, if we couldn't keep our patrons or our staff safe, then pulling back to what we could do was the only responsible thing to do at this time. It's quite clear from the mayor's guidance as well that vulnerable populations stay at the center of any recovery. And one other area where we think it being important to see the library's role played is in the workforce development and economic recovery space as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, going to make that point. I know you're going to touch on the fund in a little bit, but that is going to be, I think, one of our hallmark. It already is, but in terms of ongoing programming and trying to help people recover coming out of this economic, leave alone health issue we're all dealing with, is going to be even a higher priority for us, obviously.
Yeah, I think resume writing, cover letter, prepping for interviews, the vast range of skills training that's available both online and in person. Those are services that have been part of our portfolio, but I think come into new prominence as we get into the recovery period. Michael, did you want to comment on that, either China's question or Bob's point at this stage? Because this will fall in your area, even though we're all responsible for it.
Sure. Just very briefly, we are certainly very mindful of all of the communities that can't access the library through online and virtual means. We've really reactivated our telephone services quite a bit more than we used to. And it took us a few weeks to work out the best way to do that. And just in the last couple of weeks, we've altered the operator system. So when you get a call, you can get directed to get a live person to speak with if you have questions about things, if you want to speak to a youth services librarian, if you need technology assistance. And we've seen just in the last couple of weeks, those numbers start to climb quite a bit. So we're trying to keep in mind, even though many people don't have online access, most people have access to a phone. So we're trying to keep those channels open. And then, as David mentioned, the outreach efforts and the communication with shelters and with other organizations organizations like that are very, very important. And we need to hear from them what they feel the library can provide. So we're trying to stay very much in communication with them as we go forward. And then finally, yes, the workforce development piece is huge. And we've been working with the fund and our staff to really think of the best ways we can amp that up in a way that reaches everyone.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll continue with my report with section C, which is capital projects, which I'll do fairly quickly. Happy to take questions, but not a lot has changed. So basically, anything in construction probably experiences at least a 2 to 3 month delay. Things that were delayed are starting back up. Everything that was not in construction continues as planned, and our capital budget, as you'll hear in the next section, really continues to reflect the projects that were already on deck without adding anything specifically new. So the Dudley branch, we had about 2 months of construction work plus move-in preparation before the freeze. We'll be picking that up, and for any of these delayed projects, one of the first tasks is for the construction firm and project managers to establish a new timeline. In some cases, some of the new guidance, given the number of people and the safety protocols that are additional, may cause some impacts as well. So it's not simply a matter of restarting the clock, but it's about recalibrating the timelines. Adam Street and Roslindale continue as planned before, still would expect it to complete in 2021, probably later that year. The Hyde Park project has a waterproofing project of 4 to 6 months of construction later this year. The Faneuil branch is undergoing a redesign, no delay. If that design is approved, we would be able to go into construction as soon as the end of 2020. The Fields Corner branch is approved or will be approved at June 30th to go into a formal design, having completed its programming study. If we can go to the next slide for the second set. Rare Books Department at Central will indeed have a delay, probably now running into early 2022 for reopening. Johnson Roof project will start back up. The Johnson Locker Room project, fall of 2020. We would do the McKim fountain repairs next year, and we have just selected a designer for the McKim master planning work, which is also very exciting. And once that contract is finalized, we'll be able to share the selected architecture firm and get working with them. The third slide on capital projects involves the others, which are in various stages of design, planning, and programming study. The Chinatown, new Chinatown library, we have a designer on board doing a test fit, working with the developer for the site there. We need to keep an eye on the development trajectory for that project. Upham's Corner, presumably once we're cleared, the RFP for that multi-site effort can be launched. West End and Eggleston programming study, we have selected an architecture firm, and that project is kicking off. This will be 2 programming studies done by the same architecture firm. We think there's a little economy of scale, but they're still 2 standalone sites. We're not combining the West End and Eggleston, just in case anybody thought that was the intent there. The Codman programming study will follow the West End and Eggleston next fiscal year. And then the South End and North End. South End did slip from this year into FY21, just with everything that was going on. And then the North End would now be projected for FY22. So that's a quick run through of the active capital projects that we have. Any questions there?
Not for me.
Okay, great. I'll move on to item D, which is an update on the Dudley branch name. I would just remind the trustees that the names of branches are within the purview of the trustees. The city did permit a change to the name of the square from Dudley Square to Nubian Square. The coalition group that advocated for that change has asked us to consider a change to the name of the branch. And you have, I believe, a letter from that coalition and a alternate suggestion from the Friends of the Dudley branch indicating support for a different name change, specifically to perhaps the Roxbury branch of the Boston Public Library. The history of the Dudley branch dates back to the early 70s when this location was first introduced. It replaced two earlier branches, one on Mount Pleasant Street, and at least one of those two locations appears to have at least have been colloquially referred to as the Roxbury branch. It also became the home for the Fellows Athenaeum Trust as well. And so we bring this for discussion today and for your guidance on a decision timeline. I think there are individuals in public comment who will want to comment on this. I want to just go to the next slide and show you the map of the neighborhood to give you a sense of where Nubian Square replaces Dudley Square, and you have the branch there right next to the Roxbury Municipal Court at the intersection of Dudley and Warren Street. The broader neighborhood certainly has Lower Roxbury to the north. The immediate neighborhoods are now Nubian Square, Fort Hill, the Washington Park area, the balance of Roxbury and Dudley Brunswick King over before you hit Upham's Corner and then continue into Dorchester. So we bring this matter before the trustees with really two parts to the question. First, should the name change? And then secondly, what should it change to?
If I could start with the comment on that. This is China. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Everyone. So just really quickly, this is something that is a trending topic when it comes to Roxbury in general. Renaming spaces to really reflect the fabric of the neighborhood. So this conversation is right on point with what's happening actually in the city. Just wearing my state rep role really quickly. We also just renamed Dudley Station to Nubian Station through policy and just working with the legislature. So again, really just focus on the fabric of the neighborhood due to the changing gentrification in the general neighborhood of Roxbury in general. And I know, David, really quickly, you mentioned the Washington Park area. Well, that park actually was probably the most recently renamed area to now Malcolm X Park. So again, I would be in support of changing the name to something that's a little bit more focused on, again, the fabric of the neighborhood. Now, whether that be Roxbury and or Nubian Square, we probably have to, go back to the people a little bit and ask a little bit more questions, but I would definitely be in support of that. And this is something that, the general neighborhood of Roxbury definitely would be in support of. This initiative to rename Dudley Square, Nubian Square was overwhelmingly supported via vote on the last election by the Roxbury neighborhood. So again, right on point with what the neighborhood will be asking for, and I definitely would be in support of this initiative.
To follow up on what China just said, I'm also a resident of Fort Hill, and I live less than a mile away from Dudley Square, Nubian Square. And I totally support this process that the community went through in voting in favor of renaming the square to Nubian Square. And I also feel like there's a very strong sentiment about respecting the neighborhood and Roxbury as such. So I personally support a name change to something like Roxbury Branch, or and to China's point, I think more community input might be worthwhile, but I am supportive of a name change.
Yeah, I got it. I'm in agreement. I think it's a neighborhood, and when voters vote something, I think you really have to pay attention to they would like. The idea of going down the path of naming after individuals, I think is always a challenge, and I don't want to see that. So the recommendations that the Friends or talked about don't make me comfortable. And I think it's something from me as a trustee that you have an area that voted to make this change. It fits in with the mandate of Mission Hill or Chinatown, and now it's Nubian Square. Everything changes, and this is the name of this area going forward. And so I'm kind of, I don't think we back away from it. I think we just continue with the name change.
And I want to echo that. Go ahead, Priscilla.
Go ahead.
No, I just want to echo that as well. I think that, to even say Roxbury branch, and, I don't represent Roxbury, live in Dorchester, but, to put Roxbury branch, I think that
doesn't make you a bad person.
Even if you were to do, thanks, John. Even if you were to do like the Nubian Notion piece, but I think to put a stake and say Roxbury branch would be fantastic, because as we know, as years go on, sections of Roxbury are being carved out, right? And it's like Lower South End, and it's Roxbury. So I do think I support a name change. I think that would be great in terms of supporting the community as well. Go ahead, Priscilla.
And you made the similar points. I worked when I was with the Urban League, looking across the street, Mel King from Warren Street over to where the library is now. I feel such an affinity for that area, but the history, I don't think we should lose the historical significance of the name Roxbury, and the fact that the Black population, that we're grounded and rooted in that area. And as has been Linda said, we see sections of it being renamed and gentrified. And I think that maintaining the name Roxbury is a strong anchor. So I am in support of a naming that has, I'll use the term, is sustainable and has legs and meaning, historical significance.
So David, point of order, and thank you all very much for your immediate feedback. But I think, David, we've answered the first question. And this is where, I don't know, we have a choice. We can certainly wait till public comment, of course, but at some point, let me just, if there is a recommendation at some point that something like Roxbury branch is the right answer, then, I'm not sure that doesn't, it sounds like that might be the leading contender. Is that a way to put it, David? Or is there another point of view,
it's
other input?
So while if we hadn't been in this COVID-19 period right now, we would have done an in-person community service, a community meeting to review the status of the branch, several of the artworks that are planned for the branch, get input on those, as well as take more input than we've been able to do around this renaming question. And so I'm sort of glad to hear that there seems to be at least a consensus on, yes, the name should change. And while there have been some ideas about naming for an individual, it really does seem that there's a strong coalition that does support the Nubian Square name, but there is also, I think, a strong sense across the neighborhood that there's value to having Roxbury be part of the name of the branch going forward, particularly as at least was colloquially so in the past. And so I think we would like some guidance from the trustees on how best to proceed, knowing that we're 3 months probably away from opening, and we would love to open with signage that reflects the ultimate name of the branch. However, if there needs to be more process, then it's better to have a thorough process than rush, given that you seem to be, as a body, open to agreeing the name should change.
Yeah, I'm definitely.
I have a question. Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Hi, it's Jabari. I'm hearing I'm an outsider. I'm not from Boston, so I'm kind of educating myself. But one of the questions I have, I'm hearing comments, I've heard comments in favor of changing to Roxbury branch, for example. I'm really curious what opinions are. I haven't heard anyone speak against the proposed notion to call it Nubian Square, and I want to know what thoughts are regarding that specifically.
There was a letter that was sent to us from the Friends of the Library,
I read that.
and they opposed to Nubian Square. I'll give you I work a lot with the fellows in that library, and I actually look to see, I look at the census and look at the population in the area, and it's 75% Black or Latinos. And so I think that, you know, as we all know, neighborhoods in Boston's change with time. And I would be more comfortable with Roxbury branch than specific for Nubian. And that's my perspective.
Yeah, and Jabari, from my standpoint, when David and I talked about this very briefly a week ago, there were two branches that became one at some point in history. And just looking at that map, it really represents the broader community rather than picking one, you know, subsection, is how it struck me. But that's why we were so looking forward to today's meeting and having this topic brought to all the trustees to get feedback, because we obviously have not seen each other since January. And this is, you know, sort of a new development. And to David's point, here we are right on the cusp of realizing the huge reinvestment and reactivation of that unbelievably important branch. So we have a chance, we have a window to, if we're going to do something, we should. My bias is toward, I think David's been using this phrase and Jeff has, and other bias toward action. And if it turns out having, you know, just raised this topic, but coalescing around one answer is possible with the trustees, then, you know, maybe moving, you know, more actively than passively makes sense. I don't know.
And I would add to the letter we got from the Friends of the Dudley Branch Library. They support naming it Roxbury Branch Library, right? I think that's what I read in the letter. So I think to be able to put a stake in Roxbury, but I'm going to shift this to Representative Tyler, right? It's your district. And so what's good is that this group, this Friends group, has been working on this issue for, has been working in that community for a long time, supporting the library when there was like lack of investment. And them to say, hey, we support the naming of Roxbury. We all think it's important to put a stake in the ground and say it is Roxbury. And so I would support in moving forward in naming it. I mean, to have the building open up in 2.5 months or 3 months and to not have a name after all this money's been put into this building, I would support, let's put a name on this building. Let's put a stake and move forward.
So what I hear then, Bob, and to the board, is Roxbury and Nubian are the two names. So we can narrow it down to potentially two names that we're all in agreement, well, not in agreement with, but they're the two names that could be finalists, I guess, you would say. I guess I always lean back on, you've changed the MBTA station. It was voted on by a majority of the group. It's a vote, and why do we want to get involved in a truly personal, it sounds like, and it was voted in by a lot, not just a small portion of the population. I guess for me, I lean on that. I understand the historical significance of Roxbury and the importance, but I also understand the city's changing and neighborhoods and names change. And so I guess I can understand both sides. I guess just narrowing it down to two would be perfect, Roxbury, Nubian, And I would say I lean toward the voters of that area, but I'll leave that for the board and everybody to discuss.
China, do you want to?
The idea of Nubian, was to anchor in the, it's really marketing. I mean, it's a very,
yeah, I get it. Yeah.
It had to do with the economic vitality of that particular area, which makes absolutely great sense. And all the startups and everything going on in that area. So that's a defined thing versus the role of libraries and the role of libraries and the significance of of Roxbury. We cannot lose. I don't think we should risk losing the significance that Black Americans came to Roxbury and thrived.
Can I just, Bob, could I just express an opinion as well?
Of course.
Thank you. I just want to say a couple things. One is, I think we should make a decision. I completely agree with Linda that it would be terrible to have the branch open in 2.5 months and not celebrate a name. I think it's almost like would be neglectful on our part, number one. Number two, I think the value of the Roxbury name isn't just what it means to that community, but the message it sends to the entire greater Boston area about the importance of Roxbury having a library. Most of us obviously know where Dudley Square is located, but it doesn't carry the same cachet as the name Roxbury does. And I think Nubian Square will be confusing, sadly, to a lot of people in Boston who won't quite appreciate what that name is. And so I think, number one, we should make a decision. If David feels the need to get some feedback, I think it should be done virtually over the next couple weeks, with some newsletter, survey, or something like that. But beyond that, I think the trustees should land on a name, vote on it, and celebrate that name when the branch opens.
That's great, Cheryl. Okay, China, I'll come to you in a minute because I want to come full circle to that. But it also struck me. I know there are probably exceptions, but there are a couple of exceptions. But West Roxbury, J.P., East Boston. I mean, many of our branches reflect the general neighborhoods in which they do their primary service. So it's more the exception than the rule, than to not have the broader neighborhood reflected, in my opinion. China, do you have do you have a recommendation for us, or given your state rep?
Absolutely. I'm probably gonna never live this one up, but if it goes not in the way the community wants. But to be totally honest with you, I honestly believe that the Roxbury name is not a bad idea. Hence, we have other branches named after the entire neighborhood, but we do have some neighborhoods that are specifically named, like the Eggleston Square, or kind of a little bit more acutely named. And I don't think that the Nubian branch would be a bad idea. And I would love to see, talk about changing with time. Folks are going to get familiar with what Nubian Square is, what Nubian Station is over time. We can't shy away from change. So if I were to go one over the other, this is just my personal opinion, I would go with naming it Nubian Library.
Or how about a combination?
The question seems to be,
but to be fair, I would just put a poll out to the community and talk about engagement with the library. They would have to sign up and engage with the library, and forever be connected with the library, and then vote on a poll. But just my personal opinion would be Nubian.
Agreed.
Very good. Agree with the poll.
Well, that's assuming that everybody has access and can. That's
Linda, what did you say? 1 second, Priscilla. Wait, 1 second. I'll come back to you. Linda, what were you going to say?
No, I said that, I agree with doing a poll. However, in the question and answer, you'll see the Friends of the Library. They're going to be doing when we do the open period, they're answering as we're going and having this conversation as well. But a poll is fine. Get more people engaged with the library. This is their library. Priscilla said, not everyone has access to computers. You're right?
Sorry, Priscilla, is that what you were going to?
Thank you.
Yeah.
David, I don't know.
So I think procedurally, I do know this is a topic that several people want to make public comment on. So I would suggest either moving to public comment or
Yeah, let's do that.
or take public comment, and after public comment, decide on next steps.
I think that's the best way to go. Let's hear the public comment first.
Absolutely.
All right, so can we alter the agenda, David, and just do that now, or defer this and come back to it? What do you want to do?
So I think you can certainly change the order, and if it makes more sense from the flow of the meeting to take public comment relevant to this topic now. We've certainly done that in the past a long time ago.
Let's do it.
Okay, great.
So can Kurt, is it Jay or Kurt who's gonna?
I'll be promoting people that can speak. We have a number of comments. Some of them have to do with this topic. Some of them may or may not. Do we wish to move all public comment right now, or just the ones on this topic?
I think the consensus was only on this topic at this point in time, and we'll take the balance of public comment in the regular slot in the agenda.
And just to remind people who are participating through the public, want to make a comment, you can submit them through Q&A, right, Jay? And then what's the other alternative? They can just
Correct.
do it verbally as well?
You can do it verbally. For example, I'm about to promote Sadiki Kambon, I believe is the name. I'm going to just unmute your microphone. I really hope you have a microphone. So this is what it's going to look like. I'm going to hit allow to talk, and their mic is going to go live. So doing that now for first.
Let's do it.
You are live now. Have to unmute though.
Siddiqui, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Okay. Can you speak up a little bit? You're fairly faint.
All right, can you hear me now?
Higher.
Okay.
Somewhat.
Well, good day, and I appreciate this opportunity. My name is Sadiki Kambon, and I'm the director of the Black Community Information Center, and also the chairman of the Nubian Square Coalition, which is a program of the Information Center. And let me just say that in terms of the Information Center, we're an all-volunteer organization. And long before the national movement to take down these signs, whatever, to honor folks who were involved with slavery or what have you, that, we led the initiative to have the former Washington Park renamed Malcolm X Park, and the same for New Dudley Street to Malcolm X Boulevard. For the last 6 years, we've been working on a campaign to take down the Dudley name because of the fact that the Dudley family, particularly Thomas, who was governor, oversaw passage of legislation that legalized slavery in Massachusetts, followed up by his son Joseph down the line, who maintained that posture until the abolitionists led the effort to take that law down. Now let me just say this, that when I hear the talk about a poll, the bottom line is that our public opinion, our public position has been that a poll has already been taken. And let me just say this, that the borders, when I hear this talk about the residents of Roxbury, the borders of our campaign, which were agreed upon by the mayor and his administration, were going up Hamden Street, across Dudley, straight up Blue Hill to Quincy, across Quincy to Townsend, through Dimmock, down to Columbus and Tremont, and back on down to the boulevard there that led back to. So you're talking about Roxbury and the residents. And with that ballot question on November 5th, the ballot question won overwhelmingly in Roxbury. The residents have made a statement. That's what we consider to be the poll. Now, there's a uniqueness. When I hear about the different neighborhood branches, there's a uniqueness to what's happening with Nubian Square in terms of the fact, we're talking about racism, a lot of different issues that affect our neighborhoods that don't affect other neighborhoods. What has happened, and particularly with our young people, is that they have embraced the name Nubian Square for a reason. Like we hear names about new energy, optimism, things of that nature. And so as the state rep who assisted us stated, that we were going, our next initiative was going to be put energy into having this station renamed Nubian Station, and got a call from her aide saying, good news, Sadiki, that the MBTA, whatever the group was, had voted to in fact change the name to Nubian Station. Now, what's going on down there is that now a key developer in our community said, Sadiki, that even the investors are giving the square a different look with the new name. Now you've got the former Hamill Art Gallery that is now going to be, which was purchased by Richard Taylor, and is going to be renamed the Nubian Gallery. The folks who are bidding to develop the Blair lot are two different groups, Nubian Ascent and Nubian Crescent. So what you have here is that the community has made a call. And let me just raise this question. When I hear this talk about the library, you know, I did a presentation to the Friends, and the question is, would there have been any kind of consideration for a name change if it wasn't for our initiative? I say no. And so what we have here is a situation where we're sending a message to our folks in the area, Roxbury, and they've embraced it. Look, this is going to be a new day for us. There's more to it than being a
I'm so sorry, Mr. Cambon. I do have to cut you down to a limit of 2 minutes for time's sake.
Okay.
If you could just wrap up your results so we can get the other commenters in.
Oh, I understand. So let me just close this out by saying that, you know, I hear this thing about Roxbury Library. Okay, let me just say this, that when I hear, well, you don't need to do a poll. Overwhelmingly, the residents in Roxbury, not just a couple of streets around the square, but Roxbury in general, have said, yes, we want this name Nubian Square. So let me just say this, when I hear this thing about individuals, and I should mention the fact that Miss Sarah Ann Shaw, who serves on the Friends and formerly served on your body, she said, Sadiki, you need to take this downtown and get this taken care of. This is too important. And so the bottom line is that we're saying that to you as a body to go with the will of the people in Roxbury who have made a statement that they want the name to be the Nubian Library. And let me close with this. What we're saying is that with that library, we want to recognize a lot of our heroes, male and female, whether it be a Mel King or a lot of other folks out there who have done work in our community through the years, Gene McGuire, just numerous people. We want to have a Nubian Library wall of honor so that our young people who are excited about this name change can come in there and be able to identify who these folks are.
Thank you. Thank you,
hopefully heighten their belief in terms of who they are. And I'll close out by saying that the community wants Nubian Library. That's what the community wants. We've done the poll with the vote, and we're calling on you to support the will of the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Jay, I'm not sure if Tracy Wiggins wants to go on record. She wrote her response out. That can be written in, that can be spoken in.
I think let's just speak it in. Thanks.
Tracy Wiggins, she wrote, I started at the Dudley Branch Library in 1989 and have met many patrons over the years. Many that I have spoken to have expressed that they would prefer the name change of Roxbury Branch versus Nubian Branch without knowing that there was an option. I'm in support of the Roxbury name as well. We also have, she also said, many of the older patrons do not have electronic access to their opinions, so she feels that they will not be heard. And last, I also know that we have someone else you can go on to. I know that the Friends of the branch, the president also wants to go on record. Jay, can you chime her in? She's Elizabeth Nagajar. I don't know how to pronounce her last name. It's Elizabeth.
Is you prepared to go live? I'm sorry, I didn't realize. We'll try it. Sorry, give me just a second.
While you're doing that, I can read the other two that were stated. One was by an anonymous attendee. She said she said a poll was taken to change the name from Dudley to Nubian, not Roxbury. We also have Candelaria Silva Collins. She is the project manager for the Fellows Athenaeum Trust. I have used the Dudley branch since the 1970s and have been active in the Friends of the Dudley Library for years, as well as the program manager for the Friends of the Dudley Library. I was also ED of ACT Roxbury, a program of Madison Park Development Corporation in Roxbury for years. We created the Roxbury Film Festival, Roxbury Open Studios, Roxbury Literary Annual, and our message was that Roxbury is rich. I support naming the branch Roxbury Branch. If the Nubian branch were in fact a Black library, Nubian might be an appropriate name. It is not.
All right, we're going to go live to Elizabeth. Elizabeth, I'm going to give you about 20 seconds. If we don't hear anything, we're going to have to move on. So sending you live right now.
I'm here. And first I want to thank you guys for moving this up. And the conversation has definitely been lively and warranted. I do want to go on record. I know one thing I do want to address that Siddiqui did mention Sarah Ann Shaw did push for it, but one of the things at our meeting, we took this under discussion quite a bit, and we're more in favor of, and one thing, you know, with every group, everyone doesn't agree wholeheartedly 100%. And overwhelmingly in our group, it was agreed that we would be more in favor of a name change to the Roxbury branch as opposed to the Nubian Square branch. Again, as it was stated that if this was our neighborhood is no longer just a Black neighborhood, it is a very mixed and diverse neighborhood. And these are things that are a reality now. And I know it may not be popular with everyone, but I feel, and other members of the group feel, that Roxbury is the neighborhood, and there will be things named Nubian in the area, but we are strongly in favor of the Roxbury name. And we did listen to Mr. Cambone's presentation, and while it's not, we appreciate the efforts that he is doing for the square, but I wanted to go on record that the majority of the Friends are in favor of a Roxbury name. And yes, there was no consideration of a name change, probably in my time as president, as he mentioned that there was no thought of a name change until he brought this up. But I know that in the past, based on members who have been a part of the group much longer than I have, that a name change had came up previously discussed. So it wasn't the first time that this was a discussion. But just to go on the record on behalf of the Friends, this is the direction that we would like to go in. And I do appreciate the discussion, and I want to be mindful of the time that I'm taking up. But again, thank you. And Roxbury does have a really strong, rich history. And that's what I like to see the library, as we're going forward with the opening, to become the Roxbury branch of the public library.
Okay, thank you, Elizabeth. I really appreciate it. Are there any more public comments teed up on this?
I believe we have one more. Tessel Collins has their hand raised. As well as Oompa.
I just want to point out, Zamala just needs to jump off in about 10 minutes or less. So we'll take this one more comment. Or Pamela, what are you trying to say?
Nope.
Pamela?
I'm okay. There was additional comments from Candelaria that were not read in, that we jumped to Elizabeth before I finished them.
Okay, so let's do whatever the last couple of comments are, and then I want to maybe make I don't know. Let's do that, and then I'll come back. Jay, is there somebody waiting? Jay, is there somebody queued up waiting to speak?
There are two people queued up waiting to speak.
Okay, let's do that.
We're going to go to Tesla Collins first. I'm going to give you about 20 seconds, allowing you to talk now and asking you to unmute.
Go ahead. He or she is still muted.
Hello?
Okay. Yes.
Good morning. My name is Tessel Collins. I'm a lifelong resident, 68 years here in Roxbury. I'm the president, trustee of the Roxbury Crossing Historical Trust and a member of the Roxbury Historical Society. I just wanted to put in my vote for keeping the name Roxbury, as the branch has always been representative of the entire community, not necessarily just the Dudley Square and Nubian Square area. As a history, Roxbury has always had a minutive history in the history of Boston, as Roxbury has been the main mainland of Boston, and where most of the history has taken place, even though downtown Boston is always predominantly recognized. I feel that by giving the name Nubian to the library will diminish the community's representation of the wider community of Roxbury, which is much bigger than just the Dudley Square and Nubian Square area.
Thank you.
All
Pamela,
right.
did you have one more you wanted to read for us? Did I understand that correctly?
Yes, I was talking about Candelaria Silva Collins, and I cut her comments short. I apologize. She also noted a vote was for Nubian Square, not Nubian everything. No one person represents the Friends of Dudley Library who have come out in support of Roxbury Branch. And then she also went on to say, we have had an exhibit celebrating Black achievers and leaders already in the Dudley branch, quote unquote, and will continue to do so with programming going forward.
Right. Thank you. Jay, one more
Last
live
one.
comment.
Oompa, we're going to you right now. And asking you to unmute.
Mute. Okay, unmute. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yes.
Oh, hey, how's everyone doing? My name is Oompa. I'm an artist, lifelong resident as well. And I think this is the only place where an echo chamber is welcome. So I'll be repetitive, but I won't be long. And I just want to say that I think that keeping the name as the Roxbury Branch feels really important to me, to keep the name, to keep the legacy of Roxbury, the resistance in Roxbury, the spirit of Roxbury intact. And I think that as we continue to figure out how to represent people of color, particularly Black voices, and centralize some of those voices in Roxbury's history, I think we can achieve what I think we want to do when we're thinking about changing the name to Nubian Square altogether, which I really appreciate as a recommendation, but just wanted to say I'm in favor. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. Okay, David, I'm going to, I don't do this very often in 4.5 years, but I'm going to try to synthesize where I think we're at. To Cheryl's point and others, we're 2 months or so away from reopening a very important branch for the library, and not having a name for it doesn't make any sense. It is the responsibility of the trustees to make decisions like this in the end. And we have clear consensus that we need to change the name of that branch. So, China, unless I get a veto here or something from one of my fellow trustees, we've heard from almost every trustee. We've heard now, at least anecdotally, from a representative sample of the neighborhood, and I accept and am grateful for all of the feedback. But with Zamawa here and everybody else still participating, we have 100% of the trustees engaged today. I would like to call for a motion, unless we want to continue this, to rename the branch, to make a decision and rename the branch the Roxbury Branch. And again, I know no decision is going to be perfect. In other words, nobody's going to agree with whatever we do. Not everybody will, but we have everybody here. So I think we should go on the record, try to take a vote, and unless somebody is strongly opposed to that, move forward. Is that appropriate? Is that okay? Or David, you have
Can I ask one last question?
Sure.
Where does the name Roxbury come from? Roxbury itself. What are the origins of the name?
Well, Roxbury is a part of England. It's a town in the UK.
Okay, so
it comes from Roxbury. where they were actually, there's a particular stone that was in this area that made, rights to water. So it was rocks and berry. So that's where it stemmed from. And then it was shortened to Roxbury. Yeah.
So it was
clearly
the Roxbury pudding stone, Jabari.
Okay, so definitely not named after a person is what I'm getting at.
Right.
Right.
I have one other question quickly, Bob.
Sure, Ben.
There's been references like Mr. Zambone said that the polls have already been taken, a vote has already been taken. What is that in reference to? Is that really true?
Renaming
Yes,
New Square.
Yep, that's in reference to a ballot initiative that was on the ballot this past November in the actual election. So it was a local election. So yes, and that was overwhelmingly voted to rename the station Nubian Station. And there was someone that made a comment about, they voted to rename the station or the area Nubian, not everything in the area. And I definitely respect that comment. But I think that it'll be a huge miss if we didn't, name the library Nubian Library.
But what was the margin of that vote?
I think it was almost 2/3 of the people in the area voted to rename the area Nubian Square.
So that would seem to make it unnecessary to conduct a new poll, wouldn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
No, and that was certainly the point of the call.
There is one difference in that was the ballot initiative. That was a yes or no question. Whereas what's before the trustees is a choice between and to do it or not to do it, but then we have two names that have come forward. So the equivalence of the question before you and the language of the ballot initiative, they're not the same.
Well, what was the yes or no on the ballot?
Do you want to name should the neighborhood be named Nubian Square? I don't have the exact language in front of me. I would get that for you if you wanted to review that in detail.
Yeah, and I don't think there's any question that reflecting the fact that the old name for the area and the branch needed to be changed. Okay, so if you have a yes or no then on what the alternative is, that's one thing. But our mandate is, I think, a little broader in that it's an entire neighborhood. It's not just one square. And there, as I said earlier, it seems to me that for the most part, we've historically tried to reflect the neighborhoods that we are in, rather than a specific subset of a neighborhood. So
I was just going to ask that question, which is that as trustees, don't we believe that this building, this particular library, is designed to serve the needs of the entire Roxbury community? So to me, it's markedly different from a subway station that has, I don't know how many subway stops there are in Roxbury, but numerous. So you wouldn't name. So anyway, I just think that if we're trying to convey who this library is trying to serve, to suggest that it should be Nubian Square, we're not going to obviously build libraries throughout other. So I just think it sort of misses what the service is of that particular facility.
Can I just make a comment on that? So, the people of the Roxbury area in this particular area are overwhelmingly people of Nubian descent. So I think that naming the library that name totally makes sense. And second, also to talk about subway stops. To go back in history, the subline, the orange line, was historically directly in the Nubian Square area, and then was moved over to the Southwest Corridor. So the point of this renaming is that the people of Roxbury, people of Nubian descent of Roxbury, feel that everything as far as staples in the neighborhood is being taken away from them. So that's the historical significance of ensuring that, the people of the area, of Nubian descent, feel like that they have assets that pertain to them. And so they remain.
China, as other people have expressed today, though, we're not trying to just serve one subset of any community or one race or I mean, just that's not what the library does. So I think we can all respect that aspect of the history. But to Cheryl's point, we have a broader mandate, and I believe personally. So let me do this because we have some choices, but one of them is not, no offense, in the interest of everybody's time, we've got to process. So let me just ask, are people, trustees, are we able or willing to consider acting on this today, or do we want to defer it? Can I just, how many people are in favor of making some decision on this topic this morning? Okay.
Well, if we defer it, when would we?
That's the problem. That's
Yeah.
one of the problems. And we're not due to be reconvened. We can call a special meeting, but I'm gonna take a reading of this, and I just got the majority of the board seems willing to make a decision. If that's the case, and again, we're never going to please everybody, even in a board. That's just not how life works. But that's why we vote. That's why we go. So, David, unless you think this is a bad idea, I'm going to call for a motion to rename this branch the Roxbury branch, and then we're going to, Pamela, maybe you could do a roll call on that vote. And then Zamawa, I'd like to start with you only because you're already past the limit for your other meeting.
So I move that vote, and thank you. And I'm so sorry I need to step out of this meeting, but I am in favor of renaming the branch the Roxbury branch.
Thank you, Zamawa. Now, Pamela, do you want to just do roll, please? Thanks, Zamawa.
Jabari, Asim?
I vote nay against the renaming of it to Roxbury Branch.
Okay. Priscilla Douglas?
Or renaming it to Roxbury.
Thank you. Mr. Gallery, can I get yours?
I'm in favor of it.
Mr. Hawkins?
I'm in favor.
Evelyn Arano Ortiz?
In favor.
Ms. Tyler?
Can I just make a comment before I vote? I think that the name change in general is the win, but I'm definitely going to vote against the Roxbury name and for the Nubian name.
Yeah.
Ms. Cronin?
You're on mute.
You're on mute.
You're muted, Cheryl.
I support, thank you. I support the renaming of the library to the Roxbury.
Ms. Josina Fori?
Yeah, I support, I'm in favor of renaming it to the Roxbury branch.
Mr. Hyler?
I'm in favor of renaming the branch. I guess again, and I'm going to say that right now, you had an area that voted on a massive name change. And I guess this is where trustees get disconnected from neighborhoods. I'm going to vote with what the neighborhood voted to change the whole area to Nubian, and I have no issues at all with going with the Nubian name. So I'm going to vote toward the branch name being changed to Nubian as what the people of that community have voted to want to do.
Thank you. Mr. Bradley?
I'm going to vote for Nubian and against Roxbury. I really respect the history and pull of Roxbury, as other people have made the point. But I think China has the first vote among equals here as the state rep, and in some respects, the train has left the station. The city's already renamed Dudley to Nubian, and there's a T stop. And I think we do have to respect the popular vote that's already taken place. So I'm for Nubian.
Thank you.
Well,
am I missing anyone? I am not. So that means we have. Give me a minute to tell you this. I apologize. I was right.
David, you have anything you want to say?
No, this is I think let's hear the vote, and then we can continue with the meeting.
It appears I have 6 in favor of the Roxbury, which is the majority of the.
6-4, I believe. Yeah.
6-4, yeah.
Oh, I should have 11 trustees, so that's why I wondered if I were missing. So I have Zamara in support. I have Mr. Gallery in support. I have Evelyn in support. Priscilla is in support. Cheryl is in support. Linda is in support.
And Jeff.
And Jeff.
So that's 7.
That's 7. Yep.
Again, I really wish on an issue like this we could be unanimous, and I respect everybody's point of view, but in the end, I think we have to go with what the majority of the board wants to do. And even if it were 6-5, it would be tough. But so I think we've made a decision, and unless somebody really finds that unacceptable.
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, move on, and I mean, I think we'll end up with more. I'm not that we're going to be worried about the press, but I would be aware that I think this vote will generate a very vocal group response to come out against this name, and that we're staying in the same pattern, and that I think it'll be a challenge for us, and I think we should be prepared for that. Again, are there other branches in Roxbury that have not Roxbury name on it? And why should Dudley Square and Nubian Square have this name? So all I'm saying to you is, I think I look at what the voters did, and I'm just going to state it now. I think we're going down with a traditional way of passing, of following the lead. And if a neighborhood's trying to change, then change with it. And I understand.
No, John, here, John, I absolutely.
I'm just saying, but Bob, really quickly, I'm going to go with the board, but I'm not going to be unanimous. And I do think, though, you're going to end up with a lot of negative press over something that's a neighborhood decision.
No, I'm happy John said that. So I'll just add really quick, and I know we have to move on. John, I get it, right? And I'm going to say that, we all are working together, and even though we're split on this, would be great to have unanimous in the end. But the vote that was taken was not to rename the library. You have the Friends of the Dudley Branch Library that's been in the trenches for over 30 years working on this branch and trying to get resources into it. We got a letter from them saying they support the Dudley piece. I think it's going to be okay. I think that, Nubian Square has been renamed. Nubian Station will be put in place. I think the other piece is when we look at the Revolutionary War, Fort Hill in Roxbury played a role in Dorchester Heights as well, right? And so it's how do we keep the history alive using that name, since we know it is being chipped. Roxbury is being chipped away, and that's real. From Dorchester, the budding of Roxbury and Dorchester, to the south end, it is being carved out. So that's all I'll say. I think it's going to be okay, even with the press, if it comes.
And Linda, thank you. I've now been connected with all of you for, obviously people have come on at different times, but 4.5 years of history with most of you. This is a fairly diverse group of individuals by design. We're intended to represent the communities of the greater Boston and the Commonwealth, by the way, because that's also part of our mandate. I can't tell you how much I respect this conversation. I really do. But as I look at this screen and each of you and how much you care about the city and the library, I think we've just done the process that we're supposed to do. And we're all, paid a great deal to do it. Kidding, joke. We're all here as volunteers because we love this. We love this city and we love the library. So it's never gonna be perfect, but I look at this group and I have such respect for what you bring to this conversation that we've made a decision, and that's how this process is supposed to work. So
For seeing us through this difficult conversation. I don't want the conversation to end, and I don't think it's fair for it to end with a suggestion that somehow those who voted to change this name to Roxbury is any less concerned about the community voice. We're just reading it differently, to Linda's point. And to
I agree. I'm sorry. Cheryl, I didn't mean to make it sound that way. I just think the area, and being from the city, born and raised, I guess I look at it as areas changing. That's all. So I'm with you. And by the way, publicly, I'll back the board decision. Of course I will. And it's a really good dialogue. So I agree.
And I just want to say something. And with all due respect, China, I personally have an issue of, and I'm having a name that represents a particular ethnic group, because the community, it's much more than that. And if you look at the history of Roxbury, it has changed through time. It was Irish, it was German, it was African American, it's now Latino and Caribbean and Asian. And so, Roxbury has a lot of rich history, and naming it to a particular, group, I don't think it represents the history of Roxbury.
Agreed. My father was born in Roxbury.
And I really appreciate
I love it, John. But I will also say that Nubian is African. I believe all of us came from Africa, right? Okay, so now move on to Bob.
No, thank you, Linda. Honestly, John, thank you for your input. China, everybody, Ben. This has been, in the time I've been in this role, this has been maybe one of the most engaged conversations we've had. Sometimes these meetings can be sort of pro forma, and we have to do a certain number of things. But today we actually, I think, stepped back and did what we're supposed to do. And again, I know it's not perfect, but I have such respect for the diversity in this group and the what each of you brings and represents, that I think we all listen to each other. We listen to members of the community, and we made a decision. So David, can we get back to the agenda if everybody's willing to do that? I know we're running long.
I will move expeditiously unless you tell me to stop for further commentary or discussion. I am picking up with slide 16, which is section E, and a brief update for the full trustees on the BPL fund. Due to personal reasons, Mary Myers made a decision to move on from her role. She will be taking some time out of the workforce for a while, and we're incredibly grateful for all her work. The fund convened a search committee, which I'm pleased to share is at the very final stage of making a selection for the successor for Mary Myers as Executive Director of the Fund and Vice President of Development for the library. So we will, I think, be excited to make an announcement in the not too distant future. And, someone of Mary's caliber isn't replaceable, but we're going to go as close to not missing a beat as possible, particularly in this time when additional funding may be needed, and maybe will be needed, and will be challenging to get. Item F is a review and approval of community room and meeting room policy and procedures, which I think help us manage expectations of renters and community groups. Emily is here to present on that. You have the documents in your packet. You can move to a vote on these as called for by the agenda, or more discussion, Mr. Chairman.
As everybody's looked at it already, if anybody has questions or discussion, happy to entertain it. Otherwise, I'm also happy to entertain a motion to approve the policy as put forward. Any comments, questions?
Priscilla has your hand raised if you want to unmute.
I'm sorry, I don't have a full gallery view, so.
I make a motion to move this item forward.
Second.
So moved. Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank
you,
you.
Emily.
With respect to item G, it's the discussion of fine forgiveness. Michael, if you would just briefly indicate the current status, which is fines are waived through a certain date. And this is actually a decision that needs to be made in conjunction with the City of Boston. So we would just like the trustees' approval to move a discussion with the city to extend the fine forgiveness period, given people have materials out and we'll probably have them out for the summer. Essentially, we don't want barriers for people borrowing things, and we don't want people to rush to bring things back at a time where they're concerned for their public safety.
Sure, thank you, David.
I think, Michael, do you want to discuss it, or
I think we can? Yeah, I think David summed up pretty much what I was going to say. So,
all right, can I get a motion, please, to approve it as recommended on the agenda?
So moved.
So moved.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next slide, which I will just pass to Evelyn and Ellen as part of the budget. This simply highlights the shift from the FY20 to FY21 budget. As presented by the mayor in April, we know this is subject to a possible final amended budget and approval by City Council. At this point in time, it still called for an actual small increase, not as much as we had hoped for originally, but to be in a position where the recommended budget includes an increase for the library, I think is a very good position to be in. And so I'll just simply pass this to Evelyn as part of the next section of the agenda.
Okay, so I'll have it, I'll pass it on to Ellen so she can go through the details, but I just want to take a few words. I had the opportunity to sit on the Boston City Council Ways and Means budget reviews, and I want to give a big virtual applause to the library leadership. You guys did a fantastic job on the review. All the members of the committee were very complimentary, not only to the work that you're doing through this pandemic, but also to the approach of the budget presentation. It was very thorough. And I was able to sit on the BPS as well, and you guys rocked it. So congratulations, very well done. Ellen, do you want to talk through the, what's coming up, the highlights on the budget, please?
Sure. If you go into the next section, you'll see the mayor's FY21 budget. As David said, that was filed in mid-April, a few weeks after we had gone out. It is the most current information. We certainly would not be surprised to see changes, but this is what we have at the moment. We were very pleased to see an additional 7.5 positions. That's 6 custodians in the branches. That'll eliminate the dual coverage for branch custodians. Also a P3 in East Boston, a librarian generalist, I should say, in East Boston, and a P2 half-time position for the Nubian branch, the Roxbury branch, I should say. And we are hoping that the King Foundation, King Boston, would fund the other half of that position. We have also, the mayor also included $100,000 for Boston Saves. It's an initiative to give $100 to every child born, every resident child born in the city next year. And I think the other large portion of the budget increase was about $250,000 for an energy conservation program. So where the city would work with us to bring down our energy costs. The council typically approves the budget sometime in late June. So we will know more when they vote. But at this point, this is what we are expecting. And I'm happy to pause there if there are questions.
No, very helpful, Ellen, as usual. Evelyn?
Yeah. So we need to take a vote.
If we do typically...
Do you want to take the whole lot?
You want to do...
Yes.
Let's do the lot.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
So the next...
Everybody's read through them, I presume, so yeah.
So a quick overview of the external sources. Again, we've developed these assumptions back in December. We know the external funding is where we have some sort of fluidity from year to year, so it can be a little bit up and down. But if you look at the sheet, we were estimating about a $338,000 increase in affiliates. The amount of money committed by the associates has been up these last number of years, and the fund has had a very successful increase for us as well. Now, will that change for next year? At this point, I think it's probably still a pretty good number. It also includes the Friends, and to the extent that a big portion of what the Friends fund in our budget are the museum passes, those may go away, but I think the affiliates is still a pretty good number. We'll know more as we get into the year. If we take this state budget pieces together, ILL, again, level funded, we had assumed a little bit of increase for this year. It was 100,000. Library for the Commonwealth, again, we had assumed a little bit of an increase. By this time, we should know the House and Senate budget in a normal year. Right now, I don't know that we have an expectation that we will know the state budget when we get to July 1st. So we are going to be very careful on that spending. And the same goes for state aid. Again, that budget line has been going up these last number of years. We assumed a little bit of an increase there. What we get depends upon if other libraries apply. I think state aid is one of our biggest exposures. That pays for a lot of hard cost. It pays for all the supplies for our custodians. It pays for the fleet. So we are a little concerned about that, but we'll see how that goes. And then the trust funds typically tend to be around 1.95 to 2 million every year. Different priorities, different things happen, but the amount of spending there is usually pretty level over the years. That brings us back to other, and other is primarily, but not exclusively, events. And as John raised, we've had some big changes there. These last number of years since we reopened, when the library was closed for the Johnson, we were at about 1.2 million. When we reopened fully in FY17, we went to about $1.7 million. And these last 2 years, we've been right around 2 million. All events are gone for the last quarter of this year. They're gone for the first quarter of FY 2021, and we will see what the third quarter holds. We are working with our catering partner, TCA, to come up with some ideas for smaller events as the mayor's and social distancing rules allow. So we'll continue to work at that. We are very busy with canceling. Most of our events, I should say, haven't canceled. The majority of them are trying to reschedule. So we're hoping we'll recapture that business when we get into late calendar 2020 and early calendar 2021. But at this point, it's a little up in the air, as you might expect. And I'm happy to pause there for any questions on this.
Any questions? No? All right, let's move through contracts and we'll do the full lot.
Thank you, Alan.
So we have the lot of contracts. These are like the normal, except for the first one, which is the communications department consultant. This is $10,000, for additional assistance to, help with excess capacity in the communications department. And then the remaining contracts on the agenda are your standard contracts for the year. So
there is one other, the courtyard landscaping is a company we have used these last number of years. They are typically the only people who bid on it. This year we didn't put it out to bid to bring people in to look at it. The timing just wasn't right. So we are asking to go forward with this without another bid process. We would hope to do that next year.
All right, any questions on that? Okay, the next is the yearly distribution for the Fellows Advisory Committee of $96,000. This is a distribution from the Athenaeum Trust Fund for programmatic events at the Roxbury branch. And the other one is delegation of any contracts during the summer timeframe, so we can just call a small group of people in the event of critical nature of a contract. So with that, can I get a vote? Can I get a motion to approve the budget and as well as all the proposed contracts on the agenda and the distribution to the fellows.
So moved.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you so much.
Thanks, Evelyn. Well done, as usual. Thank you,
Most
Ellen.
welcome.
I think that takes us through, Pamela, the proposed schedule for trustee meetings. Is that an actual item, or, because I didn't see the specific dates. I just must have missed them when I was doing
Jay,
prep.
Jay, can you forward it, please, to the dates? Thank you.
Okay, great. So for your review, and obviously, given how life works, you know, these are subject to change at some point if necessary, but this is where they stand right now. I also want to put out there that since none of us have a crystal ball, whether we need to do one more or more virtually or not is going to depend on events as they unfold and guidance from the powers that be. But just for everyone's calendar, these are what we're planning around. And I think Pamela actually polled people anyway, and these looked good for most of us, given trying to line up 11 different calendars. Does that cover that, Pamela?
You did, thank you.
Okay. With that, we're on to new business, I believe. Any other topics people would like to raise? If not, Jay, is there more public comment lined up?
There were other statements, Bob, that weren't read into the record.
Okay, you want to do those, Pamela?
I can do that pretty quickly. One was from that woman, Oompa. I don't think the naming is about who it serves. It is about who it honors. So it's not a fickle matter about narrowing the scope of service. The next was from the president of the Friends Group, Elizabeth. Forgive me, I don't know how to say your last name. The neighborhood voted to change the square, not the entire Roxbury area. Tessel Collins added, thank you, Linda. We also had Siddiqui Kambon added, the community will not be pleased with the decision to deny name change to Nubian Library. Please prepare to hear from us. Next, we also have Alyssa, who said, making sure I'm able to add public comment. So we have a few people that want to add public comment. David Vieira raised his hands. We have Alyssa Kadillik, and we also have Alyssa Birdseye, who wanted to do public comment. So Jay, would you like to add them in?
Yeah, who should we start with?
You can start with Alyssa Kadillik, who was first on the list, and then follow that with Alyssa Birdseye, and then David Vieira.
Sounds good. Alyssa, I'm sending you live right now and asking you to unmute yourself.
Can everybody hear me?
Yep, thank you.
Okay, great. Let me just pause that because that's great. So thank you. And it's nice. So Alyssa Cadillac, the president of AFSCME Local 1526. It's good to see you all and to see the trustees resuming business. A couple of things just related to the topics you discussed today. As you know, the governor released the report for reopening businesses, and I know David touched on the plan about opening the library and the progression. And while that they have been in contact, a lot of contact with this union, we do want the trustees to be aware that the occupational health and safety organizations have actually given Baker a failing grade on his reopening plan, mainly because it does not appropriately protect workers. And so we just want to put a caution in there that while the library does seemingly seem to be following worker protection, we just want to make sure that worker safety is the highest concern for us, and we don't want to just do what everyone else is doing. So, you know, I also heard David mention that Brookline's doing this and Cambridge is doing this and Somerville might be doing that. Just because so your friend jumps off the bridge doesn't mean you should too, is what I heard growing up from my mother. So I want to make sure that we're not doing that.
Hey, Alyssa?
Yep.
Alyssa, as you know, after 4.5 years, I don't generally respond to comments in public comment, but I want to reiterate two things. John made this point at the governance call this morning, which he chairs, and several trustees have made the comments in the earlier part of this meeting, there is no higher priority for the leadership, whether it's the trustees or the management of the Boston Public Library, than the safety of our workers first and patrons second. There's no question. So, but I also want to say, we're going to take guidance from the governor of the Commonwealth and from the mayor of the city. And that's going to be channeled through David and the management team. And the trustees, unless something is very, very different than the 4.5 years I've had experience with this, are going to support what the governor, the mayor, and the leadership of the library believes is right on behalf of all of our workers and our patrons. So I just wanted to re-emphasize that point.
I certainly appreciate hearing that. And as I said, the library to this point has seemingly come across as being concerned for worker safety.
I wouldn't say seemingly. Every single conversation I've had with David during this catastrophe that we're all living through has started and been focused first on the safety of our workers. So I just want to emphasize that point.
And again, I do appreciate hearing that. We don't know what the plan is yet. So until we have a full, we have the high level of holds pickup, but until we have a full plan, and I agree, David has in his staff meetings and his meetings with us, has come across worker safety as a priority. But until we hear the full plan, I can't commit 100% to knowing that. But I do appreciate and have not said that he hasn't been.
Alyssa,
So.
None of us do. We don't have a plan right yet. We talked about that earlier in the meeting. We're all going through unprecedented circumstances here, and the team is working really hard with all of the public safety experts available to sort that out. So we will continue to have this dialogue. I commit to you that the trustees will continue to focus on this with the leadership of the library, and in turn, as I said earlier, the leadership of the Commonwealth and the city.
I thank you for that, and I look forward to continuing this conversation. Just two other points that I would like to put out is one, that it was great to hear the dialogue about the renaming of the branch. I think this shows the path this board of trustees has traveled over the past 5 years. And it shows the willingness to engage both with the community and each other. And so I want to commend you for listening and hearing and debating and putting such passion. It's really a testament to you all. And then the last thing that I just want to touch on is the fine forgiveness. When you voted back in, and I know it's working in conjunction with the city of Boston, but when you voted back to waive fines for children and youth, I stood up at that point and said, I think we should do it for all. And I just want to put that out again, that I think this is a perfect opportunity to think about going beyond just the pandemic right now and the fact that we're not having people return things for quite some time. But maybe this is time to promote that for the community as well, and that we move forward and waive fines for adults going forward in its entirety, not just for the pandemic. So thank you for your time.
Jay, can we add, it can be Alyssa Birdseye?
Adding Alyssa right now. Asking to unmute.
Okay. Oop.
Yep, we hear you.
Oh, good. Excellent. Thank you. This is Elisa Birdseye. I'm the president of the Boston Public Library Professional Staff Association. The BPL PSA would like to thank all of the library workers who have pivoted so swiftly and with so much dedication to providing services in unexpected and trying circumstances. We hope that you've had an opportunity to see some of the online programs for patrons of all ages that we've been providing through a variety of online portals. We'd also like to thank the library and the city for taking a thoughtful approach to reopening based on public health data. We are eager to return to delivering in-person services to our neighborhoods, while at the same time we must make sure that it can be done safely. Reports from other library systems throughout the country give us grave concerns that safety of staff and the public is not being taken as seriously in other locations, and we're very concerned for our fellow library staffers elsewhere in the country. As a truly democratic institution, the library is the one place in any community where anyone, regardless of age, job, immigration status, financial means, or education level, can mingle freely to meet a variety of educational and personal needs. We are free to all, as it says over the doorway of the McKim building, but we must also be safe for all. The virus has exposed deep fissures in our society, which the library has been helping to address for many years. The digital divide is real and critical and dangerous to the stability of our society. The library cannot fix this issue alone, but we can certainly help be part of the solution. The greater issues will have to be solved with a great deal of soul searching and public policy changes and financial investment. Members of the PSA are eager to be part of the solution, and we welcome dialogue with public officials, with the trustees, with library management, and with the public to help address this critical need. Thanks for your attention, and thank you for taking this all so seriously.
Thank you. And next and last is David Vieira.
Allowing you to talk now, David. And remember to unmute yourself.
Correct.
How's that?
That's good. We can hear you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you all for being there today. And I want to first say that to management and to the trustees that we miss our libraries terribly. And we look forward to the time when you folks reopen the doors again so we can all go in. Because of my own technological difficulties, I was not able to get in on the conversation about the renaming of the Roxbury branch. I'm glad you made the decision you did. In my own personal opinion, if we start renaming branches every time the demographics of a neighborhood change, you would be having these votes every 3 or 4 years. So as someone who worked for both the predecessor branches of the Roxbury branch, both at the Mount Pleasant branch and the Memorial branch as a high school student shelver, I also have deep roots in this neighborhood, and I look forward to the time when the Roxbury branch reopens and we can go there. On the point of reopening, I would like to ask the management to set up a communication with the friends groups, just giving them an outline of what is to come so that they have some guidance in their planning. A lot of the branches have been calling the citywide friends with what's going to happen, and we don't know what's going to happen because no one has talked to us as a group about what's going to happen. So even a simple email giving us some guidance as to future steps might be very, very helpful. And thank you very much.
There was only one other, I don't know if he would like to speak. His name is Fred Grosso. Jay?
Finding.
Thank you.
He is live.
Hello?
We can hear you. Thank you.
Oh, that's great. I didn't realize this. I was in brushing my hair. I would say, I know you don't get paid. You're doing a great job. My wife used to work for the library. I go all the time to the West End branch. I'd give a shout out to someone there, but it's not fair. But I really thought you stumbled through that question about changing the name of the library. And you probably should have kicked it down the road and thought about it a little more. I don't know how much thought you put into it, but it didn't come across in what you were doing there. and there were some personal statements. My first question was directed to, is it Mr. Gallery? Because he was talking about the governor when you would not, and this got away from the naming of the library, but it got to be when you were talking about whether the library is going to be safe for your employees to go back and work. And it seemed like Mr. Gallery was saying he's going to do whatever the governor or the mayor says. I don't know, is the governor a public health expert? Is he a doctor? I think there's a lot of questions that we haven't had answered about what this virus is doing. And it's very dangerous for these people. Every time I go into Whole Foods, I feel bad for those people working there. But today, this is the first time I've ever seen one of these meetings, and it's really exciting to see all you people. And I know you're devoted to your jobs, but I think you stumbled on that question of that branch name. I don't think you made it, you're wrong, but I think the way you did it wasn't very good. And you really opened this question up. It's not settled. But the other thing is, I think you people should be assured of yourselves, and you can make the decisions, and you don't need the governor to do it for you. If you do, you should all go home, shut down, and let the governor make all the decisions. So that's why I sent that little message in, and I haven't thought about it much, but I'd be willing to talk to anybody that wants to talk about it. Thanks a lot.
That concludes the public comment, Jay.
Thank you.
So, David, is there anything you would like to add? Because otherwise I will make one last comment and close up.
I'm all set, Mr. Chairman. Just a reminder that we have the second mostly procedural meeting to hold as well as part of this process.
So we close the public meeting and go into a brief.
I believe you can adjourn this meeting and then go straight into the second meeting, which is the election of officers and some enabling votes.
Okay.
So no one leave, basically.
Yeah, basically everybody, I know we've pushed it on time, and I'm very grateful to all of you for that. I appreciate the last public, all the public comment, but I actually think we've been fairly deliberative today, and my comments with regard to reopening were not intended to imply that anyone has, the unique capacity to make decisions for us. In fact, just the reverse. I'm kind of assuming that the governor and the mayor are using as much help as possible from public health experts. And in turn, our management will take advantage of those. So, but I also don't think that any of us as trustees think that we have the answers either on what the right solution to this pandemic is. I wish we did. David, and the last thing I want to say, and we'll go into this second meeting, but I can't thank all of you enough again for your dedication to this organization and its mission. And I'm actually, it doesn't happen often that we get presented with something like the topic this morning. And again, notwithstanding the comments of the last, from the last public speaker, I actually think we've taken this extremely seriously and given it a great deal of serious thought. And the fact that we didn't come out unanimously is probably not a surprise. I mean, it's hard to get people to agree on even difficult topics. So I just want to thank you all again. With that, I'll adjourn this meeting, and we will continue, David, with the next, the votes. Yeah.
Jay, you can forward the slides. We're just gonna, if you could just convene the second meeting, Bob, as a corporation.
Right. You'd think after 5 or 6 times of doing this over the years, I'd get this down. But
you can forward again, Jay.
Okay, so really I'm calling this to order and then handing it over to John.
John available? If it's
Still
not,
there, John?
hold on.
John, you're on mute.
Hold on, I'm sorry.
John, you still there?
Could we ask Cheryl, who is the,
Cheryl, are you still there?
What do you need me to go, just go through the,
Yes, yes, please, if possible, on behalf of governance, because I'm not a member of that committee, obviously.
Pamela, can you just open, or Jay, can you open, I'm just looking, what I'm looking at is our nomination of officers, but I don't see the list. I just want to make sure I get it exactly right. Okay, so I think what we have before us is the recommendation of the governance committee that we elect the following slate of officers: Robert Gallery chair, Evelyn vice chair, Pamela clerk. So I'll just call for a motion on that.
so moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Great. Pamela, what else do you need?
That was it. Thank you very much. Mr. Gallery, if you could proceed with the second meeting. Jake, can you flip forward the slide?
Yes, sorry.
On the screen.
Oh, got it. Can I get, is it appropriate to just call for a motion on these as presented? Pamela, I think it is.
We're gonna do them as a
Okay, can I get a motion, please?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
forward the slide, Jay. No, new business is it, and then you adjourn.
Any new business members? Hearing none, I will adjourn our meeting.
Thank you, Bob.
Thanks,
And,
Bob.
Pamela.
Thank you all. David, thank you and your entire team for everything, all the work you're doing every day.
See you in September.
Thank you. Stay
Thank you.
healthy, everybody.
I know.
See you next time.
Thank you,
Bye.
trustees.
Bye, you guys.
Everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Enjoy the day.
Thank you, Jay, for your help. I appreciate it.
Thank you all.
Take care, guys. Hey, bye-bye now.
Take care.
Thank you, everyone.